I'm sure some of them in Brindisi sees the excitement as a lot of stress. This is a tough battle to become a congressman, and he's on the line right now. Anthony Brindisi, good morning.
Good morning, Bill. How are you?
Good. So, actually, I was talking to Carl Palladino about some of the comments that were made. The Italian Americans, especially Italians in this area, were very offended when she went after your family. Palladino said, "Hey, it's a tough fight out there. I'm all okay with it." Does that surprise you with Carl?
Does it surprise you?
No.
No.
Sometimes
doesn't surprise me either.
We ask questions we know the answer to. Just want to just confirm that we had it right.
Doesn't surprise me, but doesn't make it right either. So
I want to ask you a tough question right off the bat, and that is one of the criticisms you've had of Claudia Tenney is she's lying about you. She's saying you're tied to Nancy Pelosi. You're rubber stamp for Governor Cuomo. You're a fan of taking people's guns away. You're anti-NRA. All these things are basically untrue. But when in your ad you say that Spectrum is bankrolling her campaign, I found two $2,500 donations. Is that correct and accurate? And do you feel that reaches the level of bankrolling the campaign?
Actually, it's $15,000.
Oh, it is $15,000.
They donated $15,000 to her. They gave her two donations of $2,500 to her campaign and $10,000 to her PAC.
Got it.
It's $15,000.
And ultimately, you feel the accusation you're making here is it's that money that assisted her in making her vote, which ultimately benefited Spectrum down the road.
Look, you can compare ads that she's running, and I always say that after almost 2 years of being a member of Congress, you would think that the first ad that she comes out with is about her accomplishments, all those great things that she has done. But in fact, she's going to run a campaign based on what she's showing already in her ads on negativity because she does not have a record to run on. Not only is it going to be a negative campaign on her part, it's going to be a campaign of lies. So she says that Anthony Brindisi is for sanctuary cities, when the fact and the truth is I voted against sanctuary state here in New York State. She's going to say Anthony's for abolishing ICE, when the fact is I've said multiple times on many different media outlets I would never support abolishing ICE. And I've said I'm for more border security. So it's an attempt to smear me, to try and paint me as someone that I'm not, to try and frighten voters, when the fact is she wants to hide from her own record. And her record is one of, for example, supporting one of the worst, in my opinion, examples of corporate greed, Spectrum Cable. Here is a company that has a monopoly over service here in New York State that got a $9.3 billion tax cut. And instead of taking that funding to invest in their workers or to build out their infrastructure and expand high-speed internet and cable into areas that don't have it, or to lower people's cable bills, they are actually raising people's cable bills, in some cases double, as I have pointed out in the OD article. They are investing in their shareholders. As of June, this past June, they spent over $450 million in buying back their shares to enrich their shareholders. And they are funding campaigns of people like Claudia Tenney, who stay silent on these things happening, prices going up on their customers, and then enable their corporate greed by voting for these tax cuts. It's ridiculous, and that's what I'm going to point out in this campaign.
I want to play the beginning of your commercial, which Spectrum is refusing to air. Just a little clip here.
If you're watching this ad on Spectrum Cable, you're getting ripped off.
I gotta tell you, you're not holding any punches there.
I'm not holding punches. And I could show you almost 2,000 people who are actually in my current assembly district have reached out to my office either through the postcards that we have done or online through email to complain about their billing practices. So you are getting ripped off, and I think people know that.
Did you know in advance that Spectrum could refuse to run the ad? Because in radio and television, broadcast television, broadcast radio, we are governed by the FCC. We cannot refuse an ad. Even if it's offensive, we can't refuse it. We can't edit it. We can't censor it.
The same law governs them too, Bill. I think they're wrong here. What they're doing is illegal. and we're going to challenge it. But just because they don't like what we're saying about their company, as long as it's the truth and we have proven it's the truth, they have no reason to not air it. They're airing ads of hers that point out that are clearly untrue, as I just pointed out. But stuff that we have pointed out in our ad, which is true, they claim it's disparaging. It's not disparaging. It's the truth.
And I got to tell you,
you are getting ripped off by Spectrum, and she's helping make that happen.
There was a case out of New York that happened in the last election cycle where I believe there was something that was. It doesn't have to be even true. The TV station, a radio station, tried to refuse to run the spot. They were forced to run the spot, even though it was slanderous. So I know that, believe me, radio, TV, broadcast, FCC is pretty tough. We would not even be able to even consider removing an ad. I don't understand how cable can do it, but it'll be interesting to see what happens when it comes to taking a look at the. I'm assuming you'll go to court on this.
Well, we'll see. We're exploring all of our options. We've called on them to run the ad. We'll see what they do with that.
Yeah.
It's a scary precedent, in my opinion, because if they can censor this kind of an ad that they don't like, what's next? What else can they decide to leave off of their channels? And that's the problem with what's happening in corporate America today. You have all these monopolies that are running basically all of the cable, all of the Internet, all of the phone, and if they don't like your political view or they favor another candidate, they're going to stifle and try and keep that person quiet, like they're doing with me. It's clear they picked a horse in this race. It's Claudia Tenney, but we're going to fight this, and I'm going to point out this kind of corporate abuse that's happening not just in the cable industry; it's happening across the board.
I would argue this is actually helping you because if you're just running the commercial, most people aren't talking about it the next morning. But because they refuse to run it, it's created a story, a press conference, us talking about it. I think it's actually better for you what they're doing now. Manaski.
So I talked to Congresswoman Tenney yesterday at the Utica Public Library. I asked her about the Spectrum thing. I don't know if you saw the video on our website. She claimed that, the prices are going up. Their service isn't great. Her comments, and you can listen to them for yourself, anybody listening to this, were kind of critical of Spectrum and then said they wouldn't even be doing business here if it wasn't for Andrew Cuomo and Anthony Brindisi, who greenlighted their monopoly of the service in New York State. Your reaction?
Well, she needs a lesson in the law, and if she knew how things worked, she would understand that the Public Service Commission, the way the mergers work, they have to be approved by the state that the company is operating in, as well as the federal government. So in this case, New York, the Public Service Commission, which the New York State Assembly has absolutely no say over. It's a completely independent agency. We don't even get to appoint the commissioners who serve on the Public Service Commission. They're appointed by the governor and confirmed by the state Senate. The Assembly has no say over that whatsoever. But the Public Service Commission approves the merger here in New York State. As part of the merger, Spectrum made certain promises like expanding broadband service, which they're not doing, which is why the state is evicting them from the state right now. And then the Federal Communications Commission also has to approve the merger, which they did. So she loves to do the guilt by association thing. It's a lie, again. And the Assembly and myself in particular had nothing to do with the merger of Time Warner and Charter Communications.
You have a follow-up to that?
I was going to ask right after that, she brought up the Pelosi money. You talk about the guilt by association. I know you've addressed this before, but can you talk about it again? $10,000 from Pelosi and I think $4,000 from her PACs. I know you've come out and said you won't support it, but the tie there, the financial tie, can you address that?
Look, I've said multiple times that members of Congress are allowed to donate to campaigns. Members of Congress have donated to my campaign, as well as former members of Congress like Richard Hanna. Members of Congress have donated to her campaign. I am not voting for Nancy Pelosi. I can't say that enough. So as much as she wants to point that out, the fact of the matter is I am not supporting Nancy Pelosi. That's all I can say about that. I don't know what else I can say.
Will there come a time where you will make a pick in this gubernatorial race?
I don't know. I'm so focused on winning this race and getting out and meeting voters around this district and fighting for my race. I really am not even concerned about what's happening there right now. My concern is making sure that I get to connect with as many voters as possible, that I win this race, I think we're doing very well right now, as evidenced by the fact that she's running all kinds of negative ads. They're outspending us right now on TV 3-1. Her super PAC, the Congressional Leadership Fund, has just made a huge ad buy over the next month, all negative ads, all lies about me. So we're being pummeled right now on the airwaves by her super PAC because they know that this is a race that they can lose. So they're going to go as negative. They're going to run this scorched earth policy, and we have to fight back against that. I'm not getting involved in other political races.
All right. And can you talk about any polling? We're hearing that in the most recent poll, you're up by about 5 or 6%. Can you confirm that?
The only polls I can confirm were the couple that were reported a couple months ago. There was one that had us up by 6 points, and there was a Zogby poll that had us up by 7. But I just don't buy polls.
Yep.
To me, the poll that's going to mean the most is what happens on Election Day. And I'm going to continue to fight like I'm 10 points down because I'm going to be outspent in this race by these corporate interest groups like Spectrum and the other ones that are bankrolling her campaign because they know with her there, the system will continue to be rigged in their favor.
All right. Finally, I want to ask you, part of your assembly district is Frankfort,
Yep.
and the Tractor Supply. One of the things I think the Congresswoman was very upset about is that you took credit for being involved in Tractor Supply. And address that, if you would. And also, what is that building that's there's a new building going up right now down there?
Well, I'll leave that new building for the IDA to talk about.
Okay, fair enough.
In terms of Tractor Supply, we worked very closely with the village. We worked very closely with the IDA in Herkimer County to help secure funding. One of the needs of the business park over there in the pumpkin patch was power upgrades. In order to get Tractor Supply there, they needed a certain level of power, and we had to upgrade the infrastructure for that business park to be able to provide that power. That was partly done through a state grant that I secured. Worked with Senator Seward as well for some state funding on that project. So we did help. I'm not saying that we're the sole reason. I never said that in any commercial. I said, but because of funding that we helped secure, we were helpful in bringing Tractor Supply to this area. Same thing with like the Utica Commons. Needed certain upgrades done to the auditorium in order to secure that franchise. I worked with Senator Griffo to help secure that funding, and we were able to get the Utica Commons here, which is a good thing. So it's a part of working as a team, something that she doesn't understand and never has. But that's how government works.
Sure.
If you work together, you get good things done.
The Republican that is vying for your seat in your assembly district came out last week with a press conference, really pointing fingers, talking about politics as usual, corruption, talking about failed nano, and coming out against the hospital going downtown. Can you give me a little procedural lesson here? Because he said, when I become assemblyman, this is Dennis Bova, when I become assemblyman, I'm going to stop this project and put it where it belongs at St. Luke's. So let's talk a little assembly procedure. Does he have the power to do anything close to that?
No.
Okay.
Simple answer is no.
Just no.
That ship has sailed. The goal now is trying to make sure this hospital gets built. Like I said many times, you can have an economic collapse in the country, in the state, anytime, and when that happens, money that's in the budget that's assigned to certain projects could be pulled and used to fill budget holes. It's been done in the past. I don't want to see that happen again now in the future. Let's get this thing built so we can have a state-of-the-art healthcare facility for the people here.
All right, Anthony Brindisi, we appreciate it. We'll talk again soon.
All right, thank you.
Thanks so much. Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi.